This last week on the parables of Jesus, we looked at one of the most famous ones. But what does it really mean to be a good Samaritan in everyday life? Hi, I'm Pastor Zach, and you're watching From the Desk from First Evangelical Free Church. Thank you for joining us right here. Don't forget that on YouTube, you can also catch our worship services every week at 10:15. And this coming week is a very special service just on the songs of the faith, songs that you have requested and that we have put into our service so that we'll spend the whole hour worshiping together. That is this Sunday at 10:15 Mountain Standard Time. I hope you join us. Over the past few weeks, we're in a series of sermons based on the parables of Jesus Christ. And the most recent one we had came from Luke 10 as we looked at the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, this is one of Jesus' most famous parables, and it's about a man who is mugged on a journey on a road that is probably dangerous. In that state of being beaten and broken, two people who should have been some of the first to give him a hand walk by on the other side of the road. The only person who actually shows love and compassion to him is the Samaritan, somebody who in a Jewish context would be viewed as worse than a Gentile. They were not Jewish. They weren't Gentile. They were some corruption of what it meant to be God's people. This whole parable was there to answer the question, who is our neighbor and how do we show that love? Now, we covered this in a lot of detail, and you could see the sermon from this last week to get the full message from Pastor Rob. But what are some ways that you can practically be a good neighbor to people around you? One of the biggest challenges we face is often we just don't know what those needs are because often we don't even know our neighbors. Maybe the first thing you need to know how to do is get to know your neighbors. Do you know the names of those around you? Do you know what their needs are? Do you know their kids' names? Do you know if they even have kids? While there are certainly things that we're doing as a church and that you can be a part of to help show brotherly love, both in your own neighborhood and for those areas of ministry that we are actively engaged on, maybe you need to figure out how to be a neighbor to your neighbors. Now, this is somewhat of a departure from what I normally will do on From the Desk, but I want to encourage you to go see a film this week. If not this week, then maybe next. And that movie is Unsung Hero. This was put on by For King and Country, one of Christian music's biggest bands. And if you didn't know, For King and Country is actually the two younger brothers of Rebecca St. James, one of the biggest names in Christian music from the 90s and early 2000s. The movie's title, Unsung Hero, refers to the mom of the family, who was really the rock-steady person who continually turned their eyes towards Jesus to know that their provision comes not from their own hard work, even though they need to work hard, but it comes ultimately from God. One of the things that struck me in this film more than anything else was how God uses the church to meet the needs of those who are in the church. If you're unfamiliar with the story, when Rebecca St. James and her family first moved over here from Australia, they came when the job fell through. The house they were living in had no furniture. They had no car. They weren't able to meet sometimes their most basic needs. And yet time and time again, God provided. And one of the primary ways that God provided was through the church, through their generosity, through their reaching out and helping them when they had need, whether it was providing furniture or car or just food for the week. 2 weeks ago, we looked at Luke 12 and the parable of the rich fool, and we were reminded that part of our ability to be generous, to love our neighbor generously, comes from the fact that we know that God will amply provide for us. That when we have a view that is heavenward and beyond just the immediacy of today, we're able to realize that God will provide everything that we need. And so we can be generous with what he has given us. So that's my encouragement for you today. There's two things. First of all, as we've already talked about, know your neighbors so that you know how to love them. And second, trust God that you can be generous in everything because God will provide your needs. In a world that is so focused in meeting our own needs first and foremost, you never know if your generosity, your love for someone else will ultimately turn them to the love of the one who gave up everything on the cross to save our souls, to restore our relationship with God, so that we could spend eternity with him. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you for watching From the Desk. We'll see you this Sunday for our special Songs of the Faith service, both in person and online at our YouTube channel. And again, that starts streaming at 10:15 this Sunday morning. That's Mountain Standard Time. See you next time. Thank you for watching From the Desk.